So let me start by telling you a little about myself, then we'll open up to questions. Good place to start?
Yeah.
Okay. How many of you have never come to an event with me before? Just curious. Introduction. Okay, good. All right, so let me tell you, if you had told me 20 years ago I'd be in Paramus on a Saturday with 10 days to go running for governor of the state of New Jersey, I would tell you highly unlikely. And you would say, I'm skeptical of that comment. I know a lot of elected officials say that sort of thing. And I would tell you it's true. I wasn't registered to vote, wasn't participating, wasn't involved. And you would probably think, well, that is a bad attribute for somebody who wants to be a governor. And I would tell you that you could make that argument. I would tell you that it's a little more complicated for me. I come from a family of Holocaust survivors. Most of my family was murdered in Auschwitz. 35 of them were taken there, 28 murdered, 7 survived. They immigrated to this country. And those of you that know the immigrant experience would know that most of that time when the immigrants come here, they are not involved civically, they are not involved politically. They are very focused and insular on building a life for their immediate family that immigrated here. And that was the experience that I had growing up. My parents just wanted us to be as American as possible. I had 2 brothers. My older one passed away. He was 2 years older than me. His name is Dan. And my younger brother is Rich, and I'm obviously Steve. My parents just wanted American names. That was the litmus test, okay? And growing up, I grew up in Edison, New Jersey, lifelong New Jersey resident, and graduating college, I got a job at an investment bank, arguably the most prestigious investment bank in the country, and maybe in the world. And you can imagine what my parents thought. They were very, very proud. To them, that's the American dream. My father had a deli growing up, and my mom had an immigration services business. So very, very normal background that I grew up working in those places. I do know more about the deli business than any gubernatorial candidate in the history of America. I mean, I grew up in that place. But the reality is after college, you get this job at this investment bank. It's 1999. I'm on a trajectory to obviously make a lot of money. It's Goldman Sachs at the time. Very hard to get that job as an analyst out of college. On the trading floor. I was there for 2 years, and our trading floor was on One New York Plaza, which is 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. When the planes hit on 9/11, you could literally feel One New York Plaza shake. And we evacuated. I'm sure all of you have a 9/11 moment that remember where you were at the time. For me, I was there, and it forced me to really rethink what I was doing with my life. 2 days later, I went to my managers at Goldman Sachs and said I was going to leave and enlist in the Marine Corps. And they thought I was crazy. They thought that that wasn't something that people at Goldman Sachs do, which is true. For me, I viewed it as really just a partial payment for citizenship. I viewed it as I had a lot to be thankful for, that my family came here after the Holocaust as immigrants, and I just viewed it at the time as a debt owed. And I left Goldman. And I went down to Parris Island because I thought it was important to be on the enlisted side. I spent a bunch of months in boot camp down there in South Carolina, Parris Island, and then I was shipped out to Iraq with the first wave of troops with the Marine Corps. You guys might have seen, if you remember, that whole shock and awe, those first couple days of the war. I was there, and we crossed from Kuwait into Iraq that second day, and then I was gradually, in that first wave, up to Baghdad. I was there for 6 months, and when I came back, the mayor of Jersey City at the time where I was living was this guy by the name of Glenn Cunningham. And he was the first African-American mayor in the history of Jersey City, and a very popular guy and a good guy. Most importantly to me, he was a Marine. And so he thought that it was very important for service and military personnel that was deployed, and they come back, to try to recognize those people with some sort of proclamation. Somehow he got my number, called me, invited me to City Hall. It was my first time ever being in a municipal building in my life, certainly the first time ever meeting a mayor. And I got there, got this proclamation. We went into his office afterwards, probably spent an hour together, he and I, and he asked a lot of questions. What was it like in Iraq? What did your parents say? Were you scared? What did you see? What was Baghdad like? And I would answer them. I didn't think anything of it because people were naturally curious because I was amongst the first deployed and the first back. So people would ask questions and all the time, and I would just answer them. But I did think that the mayor and I got along really well. Like, it was a natural, comfortable conversation. I left, thought I would never be back at that City Hall again, because why would I? And certainly never see the mayor again, because why would I? I was trying to get my career back in finance, and I was working, and about 6 months later, I'm leaving work, and on my phone, I get a 201 area code. And at that stage in my life, I would answer an unidentified phone call. And so I pick it up, and it was the mayor. It was this guy, Glenn Cunningham. And today I have a perspective on how weird of a phone call that was, because being the mayor today of the city, I know I have 3,000 employees that report to me. I have 20 people that do constituent services at the time. It's like a big operation in Jersey City. I mean, it's an $800 million budget I'm responsible for. But at that stage, I was 25, so I didn't know any of this stuff. I thought he was legitimately calling about a complaint that I made a week earlier about a parking issue. And I actually said that to him, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But what he says to me is, he says, look, I'd like to find some time to meet with you in person. I want to talk to you about a couple things, if you could find the time. And so we went back and forth, and we set a time for 2 days later for me to go into his office after work. And it was my second time ever being in City Hall, second time meeting the mayor, going to his office, and he starts talking a little bit about the politics in Hudson County at the time. And he says, Steve, this coming June primary, so 20 years ago, he says, this coming June primary, he says, Bob Menendez, you've heard of the guy, right? He was our congressman at the time. So he said, Bob Menendez is going to run a whole slate of candidates. He's going to run himself for Congress, and then underneath, county clerk, county surrogate, and then these committee seats underneath. This is what Cunningham says to me. And it's foreign to me, so I'm just like, okay. And then he says, we're gonna run a whole slate of candidates. We're gonna run somebody for Congress, and somebody for county clerk, and county surrogate, and then these committee seats underneath. And I said, okay, sure. And he says, people that go far in elected office have some similar parts to their story, if you really think about it. I said, okay. And he said, most of the time they start when they're young, in their 20s, and they grow gradually over time, building slowly. I said, okay. And then he says, the second thing is, most of the time they lose before they win. That's kind of a common thread, he says to me. And I said, is that true? And he said, yeah, it is true. He says, you could look at presidents of the United States, highest office. It's a fact. Most of them have lost before they won. I mean, George Bush, Bill Clinton, it's true. Barack Obama, I mean, it happens to be true. We didn't know about Obama at that point, but it's 2005. But I was like, okay, fine. It sounds very interesting, And he says to me, look, I'm going to tell you something, and I just don't want you to have an adverse reaction, okay? He says, I don't want you to say no. I want you to listen and just think about it. I said, okay. He goes, I want you to run for Congress against Bob Menendez. And I said, you got to repeat that for me. And he says it again. And I said, Mayor, look, I'm not registered to vote. I'm not involved. I'm like, it's like I didn't expect this conversation. Let me think about it. And I left, and I stood in front of City Hall, and I called my parents. I made like 8 phone calls. I called some friends from college, and I told them what I just told you, this whole story. And they all had the same reaction. They listened to me, and then they all said the same thing. They said, are you sure that's what the mayor said to you? And I said, yeah. I said, yeah. I said, yeah. I said, I'm telling you, I was in that room. And so I know we don't know each other really well yet, but I do try to live my life in a way that you can't plan everything. And sometimes, whether it was enlisting in the Marine Corps, I didn't expect to do that, or these sort of instances, I do feel you grow as a person when you put yourself in these uncomfortable areas and you kind of experience different things. And I viewed that opportunity to run for Congress as a similar situation that I didn't anticipate. A door opened, and I said to myself, this is the type of thing I'll tell my grandkids about in 50 years. And that was the motivating factor. I registered 2 days later, and I called him up that day, and I said I would do it. And so he and I started this campaign from January to June, and every day he and I are together, campaigning. And those of you that follow New Jersey politics would remember that a week before the election, he and I are actually campaigning together, and he has a massive heart attack, and he passes away. And it was a big deal. It was on the cover of the New York Times because it's not every day that a sitting mayor in one of the 100 largest cities in the country passes away in office, and it's not every day that an African-American mayor passes away. There were less of them in those large cities at that point in time. So it was on the cover, it was a big deal. And the following week was the election, and needless to say, I never became a congressperson. But so you're probably wondering, why did he tell me all that, okay? So those 6 months when we're campaigning every day was a pivot point for me. It was a life-changing experience that I did not anticipate, very similar to the Marine Corps. So he and I, Cunningham, are out there every day. And all day when we're out there, people are coming up to he and I'm a nobody, but the people don't know that. They assume and they just want help, and they're coming up with issues, local issues and state issues and federal problems that these people have. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? I got a problem with that. Some very small and some very large. And I have a front row seat to this every single day for 6 months. And in the times that he was able to resolve the issue that this person was concerned about, or connect them with a person that was able to resolve it, I could visibly see how that person's demeanor changed when they got that solution. They came to him with this issue that was a heavy weight on their shoulders, and somehow he was able to kind of alleviate some of that pressure, and you could visibly see how that person felt differently and acted differently. And I thought it was the most amazing thing. I was like, wow, this is such a great thing. I want to do this with my life. If I ever have a chance to do something like this with my life, it's more important to me than any sort of financial service job. It was a pivot point for me. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I didn't anticipate any of that. The following year, I ran for city council in Jersey City. And running outside of the political establishment is a tough thing in Hudson County, a tough thing in Jersey City. It is a very rare situation that somebody wins a seat like that. And we squeaked out this council seat in downtown Jersey City. And it was a big enough deal, to put in perspective on how rare that is, that the New York Times wrote a big article about it. And I share that with you because if you think about it, when was the last time that you saw the New York Times write an article about any council person winning a seat in any city in the country? It was a rare anomaly. And I worked hard as a council person. In 2013, I said I was going to run for mayor of Jersey City, very much like this race that I'm running right now, very grassroots focused and very substantive on policy. And when I tell you that the entire political establishment was against me in 2013, I'm not doing justice to that statement. I mean, of course, you had all of the Jersey City Democratic Organization, you had all of Hudson County, you had every person of notary, whatever that word is, that's what I'm trying to say, in the state, engaged. Cory Booker felt the need to cut a commercial. Mayor Bloomberg across the river felt the need to cut a commercial. It was one of two races in the country that then sitting President Barack Obama directly engaged in. He actually put a commercial out. He engaged on behalf of Rahm Emanuel, running for mayor of Chicago, and Jeremiah Healy running for mayor of Jersey City against me. I share that with you because I know a thing or two about the race that I'm in right now. I know a thing or two about people not thinking that I'm going to be successful, and I certainly know how these grassroots campaigns look. I won that race, and I'm the first three-term elected mayor in Jersey City in 70 years. And I share that with you because it is a complicated city. It is the single most diverse city in the country, every year recognized as much. And it's arguably the first or second on population. And we have wealth, we have poverty, we have different communities. I mean, you name a challenge, we have it in Jersey City. Now, over the last 12 years, Jersey City has been one of the best Renaissance stories in the country. And you could visibly see it, but if you think about it, we've been the state leader in every housing policy, affordable housing, environmental justice, economic policy. I mean, you name it, we have been at the forefront. And when people say, of course Jersey City would have changed, it's 3 miles away from New York City, I always say the same thing. I say Jersey City has been 3 miles away from New York City for 250 years, okay? And the reason that it's changed is because it was able to articulate a clear vision during the campaign and just drive at that every single day to change it. Most of the things that Phil Murphy would tell you today, if he was here in this room and you asked him, what are your biggest accomplishments as governor? Most of the things that he would point to, the first place that it happened in the state when it was difficult and hard to accomplish happened to actually be Jersey City. We were the laboratory of change. The first for the minimum wage, Jersey City. The paid sick leave, we were the 6th in the country. It was brutal to do it when we did it. Vision Zero, we were the first. They just copied us this year. Short-term rentals, I mean, we had a $6 million battle with Airbnb that became a national narrative around that. I tell you this because, yes, when he points to things, the first place when it was uncomfortable to do it was Jersey City. Now, 2 years ago, I started this campaign for governor. And at the time, the political establishment said, you're pushing people, it's too early, they're not gonna like that, they're not gonna be your friends. And I said, look, I'm starting this campaign early for 2 reasons. It was very clear. I said, the first reason is that I wanted to do something that was substantive on policy, and you cannot do that in 6 months. Not just platitudes on websites where you say, here's the 3 bullets about trains or 5 bullets about taxes. I wanted to dig into things and see if people would respond to that. And so what I would do is I would start once per month with one part of our policy paper: trains, transportation, next, housing, next, public safety. And we'd roll one out one at a time. They're 20 pages, 25 pages, 18 pages, all the same way. This is what I did in Jersey City on this issue, what I accomplished. This is what I learned while I was doing it. And this is what I know I can do for the state of New Jersey if you give me the opportunity. And then we would do these Zoom calls. And I wouldn't know who wants to talk about trains 2 years ago. I didn't know. 400, 500, 600 people on those calls. And I knew then that people respond if you are clear with what you're trying to do. If you treat people like adults, that even if they don't agree with you, instead of saying these poll-tested kind of sound bites, if you say things in a sincere, honest way that they don't even agree with you, but you could rationalize it, they will respond to that. And so we started to grow. And the second reason I started this campaign early was because I wanted to build something that was grassroots focused, something that wasn't beholden to those political machines. Because if you want to change it, if you want to change the culture in New Jersey, it's not credible if your starting point is being beholden to them. That's the truth. And so today, our campaign is bigger than anybody else, by far. I mean, we're 1,500 plus volunteers every day engaged. We don't have a campaign manager. We don't have a field director. We don't have a finance director. None of this stuff. We don't even have a campaign office anywhere in the state of New Jersey. It doesn't exist. And I tell you that today, the majority of those 1,500 volunteers are out there pounding doors and on phone banks and working because the campaign is different, because it is mission driven with regards to changing New Jersey. I mean, NJ Monitor did a thing 2 weeks ago about salaries and payrolls of these campaigns. Raz Baraka, $500,000. Mikey Sherrill, $300,000. Josh Gottheimer, $250,000. Us, they actually had it wrong. They said $3,000. It's slightly more. I think it's $8,000. But my point stays the same, okay? Is that we are not structured the same way. It is entirely focused on changing New Jersey. I've done 120 plus of these sort of conversations. I have 4 of them today. Give you perspective on what I'm doing today. And they're the most important things that I do, because I learn a lot, and hopefully you get your questions answered. And what we're going to do now is just you raise your hand and there's nothing off limits. I mean, if you want to talk about politics, electability, if you want to talk about November, if you want to talk about trains, buses, nothing is off limits.